Hello, this is Brajesh Patel, and today we're going to present on redefining the warm up. First of all, we got to talk about what our goals of training are. The number one goal of anybody who trains is to become healthier and reduce the chance of injury. It doesn't matter if you're training somebody to make their high school varsity team or training somebody to lose 10 pounds. If you aren't healthy and you don't feel better, what's the point? Reducing the chance of injury has to be the number one priority of any training program. Then improved athleticism, body composition, improved performance, and ultimately try to become a little bit more confident. I don't say injury prevention because you can't really prevent. What we do is try to reduce the chance of injury as much as possible. Injuries are parts of sports, but we have to try and keep our athletes as healthy as possible so they can play and attempt to win championships, hang banners, and ultimately make memories for themselves. It doesn't matter how much you bench, your squat, your clean, what your vertical jump is, what your 40-yard time is. If you're hurt and you can't play, that if you're hurt, you can't play. And in my opinion, a lack of mobility, stability, fitness, and conditioning is usually the cause of many injuries. Most injuries occur when we're decelerating or reducing force. Let's think about what we need to do when we need to decelerate. To effectively reduce force, we need to be able to flex at the ankle, knee, and hip. Now let's think about what happens when you fatigue. You're more likely to use less range of motion because it takes more energy, and you can no longer get into the proper positions to reduce force efficiently. We lack the ability to bend. Ability to maintain appropriate balance in a fatigue state is compromised because muscular fatigue is going to induce a delay in the activation of muscles in response to rapid destabilizing or what is called perturbations. Perturbations are disruptions in function and can be due to external mechanisms outside the body or internal mechanisms within the body itself. When you can't get into proper positions, you can compensate and use other muscle groups to take over. This puts undue stress on areas that don't need extra stress. The key here is to mobilize, stabilize your proper areas, and work on overall fitness. Now, this is pretty graphic if you've never seen it before, but this is exactly what can happen when there's poor training and injury history. In his first 3 seasons in the NBA, Sean Livingston had a whole host of injuries: dislocated his right knee, sprained right ankle, torn cartilage in his right shoulder, stress reaction in his lower back. He had a lot of issues going on that caused this one disastrous, catastrophic injury. His first 3 seasons, he missed 101 out of 246 games. 41% of the games he was eligible to play in. Non contact injuries are really isolated incidences that are usually caused by other problems that have gone unnoticed. Good balance training can help to reduce the number of injuries that are experienced. Unfortunately for Sean, he's turned his career around and been a key contributor to the Golden State Warriors in the last couple of years. So today's goal is to show you how the warm up can help reduce injuries, how to design a warm up, and of course to make you think. The warm up isn't a component of a session, is a huge component of a session, but it shouldn't be overlooked. Right? When we talk about goals, number one is increase muscle and body temperature. A warm muscle both contracts more forcefully and relaxes more quickly. In this way, both speed and strength can be enhanced. Next thing is increase body temp. This improves muscle elasticity, enhances neural activity, which can improve force production and speed. We want to dilate our blood vessels. This reduces resistance to blood flow and lowers the stress on the heart. Increase blood temperature. The temperature of the blood increases as it travels through the muscles. As blood temperature rises, the binding of oxygen to hemoglobin weakens, so oxygen is more readily available to working muscles to help generate energy. Increase joint viscosity. The range of motion around a joint is increased and allows better joint mechanics. Hormonal changes. Your body increases its production of various hormones responsible for regulating energy production. During warm up, this balance of hormone makes carbohydrate and fatty acids available for energy production. Mental prep. Warm up is also a good time to mentally prepare for an event by clearing the mind, increasing focus, reviewing skills, and strategy. Positive imagery can also relax the athlete and build concentration. Activation jazz level. My good friend Rob Rodgers talks about increasing someone's jazz level, which is basically saying to get yourself mentally going and get yourself feeling good. This is really attempting to get the athlete to be a little bit more sympathetic, right? We want their heart rate and blood pressure to go up as well as to get the adrenaline going. This goes along with the mental side, but also means getting one's energy and arousal levels where they need to be. If someone's dragging when they start and they're very parasympathetic, you got to get them going if they're going to get something out of a session of practice. And lastly, grease the groove. Pavel talks about greasing the groove, which is really talking about improving motor patterns, and the warm up is a great time to address any movement deficiencies you may have, to reinforce technique and as well as correct issues. Warming up is something, it used to be something like hopping on a bike or doing a lap around the track and then doing some static stretches. But then we found out that static stretching actually decreased force production, power, and muscle stiffness, which are all qualities that we want to improve or enhance during a warm up so we can use that when we start to train. This then led to the boom of dynamic flexibility or stretching, which enhanced the qualities that static stretching inhibited, and everybody was espousing the benefits of dynamic flexibility. I've been a strength conditioning coach for well over 20 years now, and over that time, I've noticed that athletes aren't the same as they used to be. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster, but also have more movement issues than previously, and have terrible movement quality, which are leading to more injuries. These things have to be addressed, and just doing a dynamic flexibility isn't the answer. We as coaches have to evolve. Our athletes these days have many physical issues that may increase their chance of injury and need to be addressed through our training. We have to evolve. Technology has changed the way we live and function, but has done a number on our posture and the way we carry our head, neck, and shoulders. When we sit at our computer or our iPads or use our cell phones and iPods, we are in a slouched, hunched over posture, which can wreak havoc on the way the muscles around our shoulder and hips function. Many of the muscles on the front side of the body can become shorter, and the muscles on the back side become longer and weaker. This is going to not only affect the way we move, but it's going to manifest itself in how muscles are recruited and the amount of force that can be displayed. If our alignment is often not ideal, then our potential to produce force will be reduced. From a postural perspective, majority of our athletes will either present with upper cross or lower cross syndrome, and sometimes both cases. These syndromes were coined by Vladimir Yanda and really gives us insight in how to attack common postural distortions within our athletes. These syndromes develop from poor training, early sport specialization, pattern overload, lack of movement, poor posture, and these syndromes can affect our performance. Year-round training in a single sport beginning at a relatively young age is increasingly common among developing athletes. This is known as early sport specialization. Factors that have driven this rise include a parent's desire to give his or her child an edge, labeling youth as talented from an early age, pursuit of scholarships and professional contracts. Limiting experiences to a single sport is not the best path to elite status. Risks of early specialization include social isolation, overdependence, burnout, and perhaps risk of overuse injury. Commitment to a single sport at an early age immerses a youngster in a complex world regulated by adults, which can take away from their childhood. Youth sport must be kept in perspective. Right, I'm just going to start to read some of these bullet points too, which are really good. Being on a team year round requires commitment and extensive travel. This can lead to social isolation from family, peers, and school community. Maybe their childhood disappears. Experts believe that a child waits for a select team until high school to specialize. They're more likely to be better adjusted, happier, and less likely to have identity crises when sports careers are over. Negative effects of failure in one sport are far less when a child experiences success in other sports or other areas of their life. Emotional stability of specializing early may be tough to handle for younger athletes. Coaches are more demanding on effort and increased stress of competing at a high level. Critical age for learning optimal motor skill development for boys is between 7 to 9, girls 6 to 8. And these are times when we really should teaching basic coordination type stuff, ABCs, agility, balance, coordination, RJT, running, jumping, throwing, kinesthetics, gliding, buoyancy, striking with body parts, then catching, kicking, striking with an implement. He stands at the plate. I'm going to read this, but I thought it was fantastic. He stands at the plate with his heart pounding fast. The bases are loaded. The die has been cast. Mom and Dad cannot help him. He will stand all alone. A hit at this moment would send the team home. The ball nears the plate. He swings and he misses. There's a groan from the crowd with some boos and hisses. A thoughtless voice cries, "Strike out the bum." Tears fill his eyes. The game's no longer fun. Remember, he's just a boy who stands all alone. So open your heart and give him a break, for it's moments like this a man you can make. Keep this in mind when you hear someone forget he's just a little boy, not a man yet. I thought that was really fitting when I read that about early sports specialization and the impact that us as adults can have on our youth. Research is finally starting to investigate early sports specialization. The athletes in this study will be reevaluated every 6 months for 3 years. And so these are some of the bullet points from the study. Early results of a study that young athletes who specialize in one sport are at greater risk of injury than those who play a variety of sports. Researchers from Loyola and Children's Museum in Chicago took 154 athletes, average age of 13, that played a variety of different sports. 85 were previously injured versus 69 none. 6-point sport specialization score. These are things that they look at. Trains more than 75% of their time in their sport. Trains to improve skill or misses time with friends. Has quit other sports to focus on one sport. Considers one sport more important than the other sports. Regularly travels out of state. Trains more than 8 months a year. Competes more than 6 months. What they found from the score was that the ones who were uninjured scored a 2.75, and the ones that were injured scored a 3.49. So athletes who scored over a 3 were considered specialized. 60.4% of injured athletes specialized in sports, while 31.3% were non-injured. Right, and just take a look at the list of notable athletes that played multiple sports. Like Tom Brady was also drafted by the Montreal Expos before going to Michigan. Jim Brown was an All-American lacrosse player, played basketball and ran track at Syracuse. Chris Carter played basketball and football at Ohio State. Dante Culpepper drafted by the Yankees. Eric Decker drafted twice in the Major League Draft. John Elway played minor league baseball for the Yankees and the Royals. Antonio Gates, all-league basketball player in college. Dan Marino was also drafted by the Royals. Donovan McNabb played basketball at Syracuse. Tony Gonzalez played basketball at Cal. Danny Ainge played baseball for the Blue Jays. Scott Burrell is the only athlete to be drafted in the first round of two major sports. Tim Duncan, competitive swimmer in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Allen Iverson and LeBron James, both all-state wide receivers in high school. Steve Nash played soccer and rugby in high school. Charlie Ward won the Heisman, also played baseball and in the NBA. And then Mike Vick was also drafted by the Colorado Rockies. So we don't need to encourage our youth to specialize early. There's so many examples and cases, and these are just some of people that excelled later on in their sporting careers, and mostly because they played a variety of different sports. So this is Gray Cook's Optimum Performance Pyramid, and he shows that fundamental movement skills must lay the foundation for optimal performance and skill. Performance and skill will not be sustained without a solid movement foundation, and that movement foundation should be developed during childhood. This is an example of a overpowered performance pyramid. This next type of athlete is the one who shows great ability to generate power, but with poor joint mobility and control of their movements. These are categorized with the overpowered performance pyramid. These athletes need to work on their functional movement skills, such as squatting, lunging, skipping, and a variety of other movements that require mobility, stability, and control. This is the type of athlete that can jump out of the gym, but is very bad at landing and changing directions under control. Ultimately, this can lead to poor performance and possible injury. The next type of athlete is the one who shows great movement abilities but has very poor power and strength. They're categorized under the underpowered performance pyramid. This athlete needs to maintain their functional movement abilities but needs to enhance their power and strength through resistance training and plyometric work. Strength and power is what these athletes need. This was most of my athletes when I first started out in my career in the early 2000s, as they were all multi-sport athletes that had really good movement qualities. The next type of athlete is the one who has a great foundation of functional movement ability as well as strength and power, but demonstrates a below average mastery of sport skills. This athlete is categorized under the underskilled performance pyramid. These are the athletes that dominate testing but can't find their way in the playing field. This shows that athletic qualities are not the end-all be-all of sport. Those who already have these traits need to spend the majority of their time developing their actual sport skills. Now, using the model of the Greeks' Parthenon, I've come up with the Parthenon of fitness. And this is just something that I believe in that really serves well for athletic development. The bottom of the building is built upon qualities that will support the structure, which is our body, for a very long period of time. The columns and the roof are only stable if the bottom is built correctly and the foundation is in place. Our Parthenon is built upon a solid base of joint mobility, work capacity, core stability, and joint stability, and sound nutrition principles. Once these qualities are in place, we can focus on improving general conditioning, building eccentric, isometric strength, acceleration, agility mechanics, and improving absolute and relative strength. When those qualities are developed adequately, we can focus on rate of force development, power, and ultimately reactive and elastic strength, as well as strength and power endurance. You can't build usable strength without sufficient joint and core stability. You won't be able to decelerate efficiently if you lack proper joint mobility. And you won't be able to train for speed and acceleration without having the capacity to work and recover. So this kind of just explains the way I like to look at things from an athletic development model and a way we look at to progress our athletes. So mobility and dynamic flexibility are essentially the same things. It's just semantics on how you decide to use them. Good joint mobility requires that the muscles around the joint can contract and relax to allow smooth and fluid movement. It is important to emphasize that mobility training is not the same as flexibility training. Flexibility training refers to static stretching, active or passive, where a stretch is held for a period of time to try and attempt to gain muscle length. Flexibility training involves the CNS much more than static flexibility because of the actual movement that occurs. By realizing that the CNS is one of the biggest influences over our movement strategies, we can now work on re educating the nervous system on the most efficient ways to move. Over time, and due to injury, bad habits, and lack of use, we have retrained our CNS to less than ideal body biomechanics. Our body's current level of mobility and stability, which is the ability to control movement, will influence our motor patterns. If we have reduced mobility, then our stability and ultimately our motor pattern will be altered. Insufficient mobility leads to inefficient motor patterns, which can lead to injuries. And volume magnifies everything. And if we add volume to a bad pattern, we're asking for trouble and overuse injuries. And at the Division One level, there's a lot of volume being done: practice, individual strength training, conditioning, film sessions, etc. And then you add in the stress of school, significant others, partying, etc. Mobility and stability go hand in hand and inherently occur naturally. Stability is the ability to control force or movement. Joint stability refers to the resistance offered by various musculoskeletal tissues that surround a skeletal joint. Several subsystems ensure the stability of a joint. These are the passive and active and neural subsystems. Stability is a precursor to strength. Mike Boyle has developed this mobility stability relationship and how it works throughout our entire body. As we teach movement for health and performance, we need to make sure that we're asking the joints to do what they're designed to do. Mobile joints are ones that exercise should focus on improving mobility, dynamic flexibility, while stable joints are ones that should focus on controlling movement. And when we're watching exercises, this is where we can really develop our coaching eye and making sure that movement is occurring where it's supposed to occur and stability is occurring where it's supposed to occur. As mentioned earlier, the goals of our warm up are to prepare for the training session. If we're going to train the lower body, that will be our focus. If we're going to train the upper body, that will be our focus. If we're going to run, then we prepare to run. We will also want to address movement impairments and correct motor patterns so we can try to reduce the chance of repetitive stress that can lead to injuries. We also want to increase body awareness and proprioception to develop athleticism and movement skills. And we want to teach the athlete how to move more efficiently, how to get their energy up, and how to train correctly.
Quit, mate. Go ahead.
Me or yeah, shouldn't we learn by dodging balls that are thrown at us, or?
That's what this sack of wrenches is for. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
What?
If you can dodge traffic, you can dodge a ball.
We have a systematic order for our workout, and we also have a progression to our warm up as well. Everything is in a specific order for a physiological reason. Before we get to each component, there are some other things that we need to be addressed about the warm up. There are some considerations that you must take into account when designing a warm up. How much space do you have available? Are you in a small hallway that's only 6 foot wide? Do you only have 10 yards of total moving space? Can you do a moving warm up, or does it have to be in place? If you're doing an in place warm up, align everybody so you can see everybody. So I'm a big fan. We don't like to have circles when we do an in place warm up because you're not going to be able to view and watch everybody. And then what tools do you have available? Do you have a foam roller, hurdles, sticks, med balls, etc.? Are you on a field or in your weight room? These things will all dictate what you can and what you cannot do. How many athletes do you have? How many people are you going to put in each line? How many people can you see at the same time? These are all important considerations to think about. And then, are you going to let the athlete run the warm up, or will the coach? Both are good and are used for different purposes. Athlete directed warm ups are where the athlete leads the warm up. It could be a captain or somebody on the team. It's either written down a sheet or on a whiteboard. Can also do a follow the leader type warm up, which allows some creativity and fun to be had. This is what I use in the off season one time a week to make the team feel like I'm giving them some ownership into what they're doing. You can't drill them every single time. You got to allow them to try to think on their own, give guidelines, but let them think for themselves. Also, having an athlete direct the warm up may get them out of their comfort zone and makes them pay attention to all the movements. You have to know how to teach it. If they don't know how to do it, then they won't look great to the rest of their teammates. What we're looking to do is help develop some leadership and get the athlete to be used to speaking in front of the group. Coach directed warm up can either be from a sheet or from off the top of the head. More used for teaching purposes and making sure the athletes know how to perform certain movements. This is used for more setting a certain tempo and tone of a training session. Good before games, practices, and when laying the foundation of a new team in the preseason. Clapping and counting is used to help athletes stay together and focus everybody in the task at hand. So our first step is to inhibit. The goal is to address and inhibit overactive areas. Refer to Yanda's facilitate areas, which we talked about before.
We want to decrease density, improve tissue quality. We also use stretching flexibility techniques to improve tissue length, but tissue quality must be improved first before attempting to improve length. This step
It's
is
all about tissue preparation. An example of things that we can do: foam rolling, um, RPR, using tiger tails, theraguns, lacrosse balls, any kind of any kind of tool that you may have at your disposal to help drive some afferent feedback into our body, wake up those proprioceptors, and try to inhibit any overactive areas. Next thing we want to do is lengthen the areas we just inhibited. And our common areas of tightness that tend to be locked up. Key areas are going to be all the muscles around the hip, especially hip flexors, glutes, internal rotators, pecs, and lats. It's easier to stretch when you're warm, but I think we can create longer lasting changes when we stretch cold. We need to try to create some deformations within the tissue, and doing it cold when the tissue is less pliable can lead to better results. We're trying to create change in length, and that takes time as we're looking to add sarcomeres and series. Long duration static stretching definitely improves length, and we are looking to accumulate this time over the course of daily warm ups and show the importance of gaining length. Tight people don't want to stretch and they won't do it at all. You have to be able to program it. Now, the only mode of getting length is not just stretching. We can perform diaphragmatic breathing, yoga poses, and joint moves. Diaphragmatic breathing is used to decrease tone as well as to teach people how to properly breathe with their respiratory muscles. Deep diaphragmatic breathing alone can help improve your flexibility and mobility instantly, as it's almost like taking the emergency brake off, and it helps to turn off tone and reduce tone. We can use static stretching. I personally like to use static active versions, as I'll show some examples, because it involves the CNS and allows it to get some activation at the same time and engages athletes much more than simple passive stretching. We'll use different self joint moves to target problem areas. There's conflicting evidence if static stretching actually prevents injuries, and we aren't just focused on improving length to prevent injuries.
Injuries, but rather to improve the efficiency of movement and reduce the risk of compensations occurring. So it's not a direct cause effect, but has an indirect effect on reducing the chance of injuries. If someone's hip flexors are tight and they can't fire their glutes, maybe that's going to overload their hamstrings and low back, which can lead to injury. I don't necessarily want to stretch my low back to prevent a low back injury, but may want to address those flexors. This quote's from
Robert Cantu. When we stretch, we don't necessarily know if we are stretching muscle.
I think you might be stretching fascia or creating more space so muscles can slide and glide easier to allow for more range of motion. It's almost like a frozen piece of chicken in a plastic bag. The chicken is muscle and the bag is fascia. I think what we're doing is creating more space around the muscle by changing the properties of the fascia. So there's less resistance when muscles slide and glide over that deep layer of fascia. Muscles themselves may not change length, but the stuff around it improves, which improves range of motion. It may also lead to greater stretch tolerance, therefore it allows us to move further. Here's an example of some static active
To toes. Here's an example of some diaphragmatic breathing and getting ourselves to understand how to inhale and fill up air through our deep diaphragm, and as we Exhale.
We want to make sure that our diaphragm can get pushed down so abdominals can be pushed outward so we can create 360-degree tension. And there's an incorrect version here where we're just moving at our neck and our chest and minimal abdominal movement. And this is just an example of some
different joint mobs that we might do. Some ankle mobility. Triplanar, right? So we can go push your knee over your toes, outside your toes, and inside your little toe. There's a prone version too of that diaphragmatic breathing. We want to make sure we see breathing occur 360 degrees around your. This study shows a decrease in power is negated when dynamic warm-up follows a static stretching. So we don't have to worry about decrease in power if we follow our static stretching with dynamic movement. The decrease in power is why static stretching is not often found in warm-ups, but it can be beneficial. Anecdotally, I haven't noticed power decrements or had athletes complain they don't feel explosive upon following this warm-up model.
Right, this is where the number 3 mobility is where we perform our dynamic flexibility work and is what most people consider warm-up. Feel that by doing the previous steps we can have better joint mobility and feel better by the time we get to this portion of our warm-up. This is prepared to move dynamically. We're focused on movements that improve ankle, hip, thoracic, and shoulder mobility. This time is also used to teach athletes how to move from the appropriate places to improve their body awareness. It can include basic motor skills such as skipping, shuffling, hopping, backpedaling, crawling, as well as movements targeting range of motion. Your torso and your abdomen, and not just forward to your belly. Another example of an ankle mob drill that we might do. And these are some different positions that we might focus on some deep diaphragmatic breathing in. This is a really good flex position to help us.
Switch! Good.
Some different examples of some foot fire drills that we can use, again, with minimal equipment. Here's an example of a basic calisthenic type workout warm-up that we might use, and we'll just call this GPP. And again, these are we're limited on the space that we have, so we do a lot of these things in place to making sure that we can be prepared and get in that we need to get in and get our athletes to feel as good as we can. All right, so the ones that we'll do on the plate are pretty simple, similar to what we would do with a ladder. Just some footwork drills to work. We like to follow that up with some mobility. Here's a little lunge series that we like to do in place too, so our athletes can get the entire lower body warmed up and loosened up, improve our movement quality, all in place so we don't have to move. This is really good use of time and a really good use of space. Do a couple reps of this on each side of our body and we're ready to rock. After we've established mobility, we want to lock it down with stability. It doesn't work. It could also work the other way around. Mobility needs to be established to allow first to allow the proprioceptors to communicate to the stabilizers and how to control the joint. Sometimes too, like we could flip this, and in recent times we've actually flipped this and done stability work first before mobility to help engage our obliques specifically, but also to teach stability, and that also sometimes unlocks some mobility at the same time. So depending on how you want to use it, like we've changed how we'll do it. Like we used to do mobility first and then progress into doing stability, but now we'll do stability work and then progress into mobility work. But normal proprioception requires full range of motion, and normal motor control requires normal proprioception. We may restore strength via improved positioning. If mobility is inadequate, then the stability work is going to be useless. It's not going to be genuine and will be a waste of time. If you remember anything, always attack mobility before attempting to gain stability. When we look to train stability, we're going to go after the areas of the body that need more control: midfoot, knee, hip stabilizers, lumbar spine, and T-spine. The majority of the movements here will be done to isolate out certain muscles to not only get the athlete to understand what the muscles should feel like, but also to make sure the right muscles are controlling the right joints. This will progress to integrated movements, but we need to isolate up first. Through the teachings of McGill, Craig Liebenson, Gray Cook, and Shirley Sarman, we've learned that the role of our core musculature is actually prevent movement at the lumbar spine versus promoting it. We should obtain movement from the thoracic spine and the hips while sparing the spine.
The most important aspect of abdominal muscle performance is obtaining the control that's necessary to, number one, appropriately stabilize the spine, maintain optimal alignment and movement relationship between the pelvis and spine, and then three, prevent excessive stress and compensatory motions of the pelvis during movements of the extremities. What Ms. Sermon is getting here is when you have the right amount of abdominal core strength, not only do you
Stabilize the spine optimally, but you can carry this optimal relationship over to movement, squatting, deadlifting, lunging, etc. Through the teachings of McGill, we have really come to understand the role of the core is act as a transfer of force rather than a producer of it, a resisting force rather than generating it. Instead of creating rotation, we should resist rotation. Instead of producing flexion, we should resist flexion. Instead of producing extension, we should resist extension. We want to progress from simple exercises, building endurance, before going to more advanced type exercises. As an example of just using dead bugs, we have a towel roll on our back just to give some sensory awareness of where our low back is in space. We want to make sure we can maintain movement there, or maintain stability there while we integrate our arms and legs. A double leg just increases the load, and then we can also change our hand positions on these too, because that's going to help increase the length of the lever, which is going to increase the load being placed on those obliques. And just a different example of leg lowers that we would do too. Work on some elastic components of our fascia, work on coordination.
And similar to what we'll do with this in-place
GPP type stuff, skipping, hurdling, coordinating different sides of our body. Again, you're just limited by your imagination and your creativity as a coach. Lock down our front side so we can only get airflow into our back side and promote some flexion for our system. Some T-spine mobility over a foam roller. Different positions that we can do it in. All in an effort to make sure that we're moving properly and we're setting a foundation to move optimally before we start to train. Stretches that we like to do, this is just a warrior series, and something we'll do we'll drive our arms to the sagittal plane. We'll have a frontal plane stressor and then a transverse plane.
A rotation to that too. This is a warrior 2. So we'll open up, our back leg is actually rotated. We'll reach up into the sagittal plane. And so it's active because we're creating stability at the same time. This is like we're not just sitting on the ground. At a rotation, and the last sequence to is a triangle pose. So you can see we're elongating our fascia
lines and tensioning them from fingertips. This is just an analogy of our kind of a rope. And if we had a knot in the rope or band in this situation, right, we want to make sure that we can get rid of that knot first within that band or that rope. The final component of our warm-up is to really wake up the central nervous system and prepare the next component of the training session. If we're going to do some sprints or some plyometric works, it could be some low-level plyometrics to improve lower leg stiffness and some sprint mechanic work. If you're going to do
lower body session, we will do some lower body plyometrics to really get some of our higher threshold motor units firing. If we're going to do an upper body session, we do some med ball throws, explosive push-up variations. What we're really looking to do is integrate all the other components that we have performed, but at a faster rate. We want to perform tests involve mobility, stability, but add element of velocity to the movements to prepare the body to perform movements at a higher rate to prepare them for the task of fall, whether it be a training session or a practice. Here's an example of suffusing some play-based activity involving the vestibular system with some reaction balls and partnership work. Doing this kind of work is really helpful to get our bodies to feel better too, because we start to integrate your eyes into what you do. It's more of a play-based warm-up, and maybe I'll do a presentation on that at some point too. But it's a great way to introduce a different components that help improve our social nervous system, and that alone can help us move easier and move a little bit more freely too.
Get some energy going, get some enthusiasm going.
Another example is med ball warm-up, same type of thing here. Partner base, we'll do this on a clock. But again, we're involving our whole body. We're getting a lot of things done together at the same time. Helps drive some energy. Helps get us our core involved. Get each other call out the names in between. Get some hand-eye coordination there too, because as we follow the ball in their hands with their eyes. And you can do a variety of different movements between sagittal plane, frontal plane, transverse plane movements. Again, you're just limited by imagination, but it's nice because it keeps everybody on task at hand. You as a coach can watch everybody, and it's a great way everybody's getting their. The warm-up is a crucial time to help prepare, correct, teach, and set the tone for the training session or practice it's about to follow. It's not something where you just hop on a bike or go for a jog and then start your workout. You must prepare your body and mind for the task at hand, and there's a systematic process setting yourself up for a great session, and it all starts with your warm-up. Just like you would set up your load and volume progressions and plan out progressions, warm-up is an important point of the training process and should be thought out and planned for accordingly. The more effort you put into preparing and coaching your warm-ups, the more your athletes will get out of it and realize the importance of simple movements, how to move appropriately from each joint, what to feel, and what kind of energy they need to have. Hold your athletes accountable during this warm-up too. If somebody isn't doing the right thing, then the entire team should be penalized. Teachers then realize that every detail of training is important. And then the other thing we want to do is we want to think about cooking the bird to the bone, an analogy of really getting hot and getting warm during the warm-up. It's an extensive warm-up that is really meant to get your tissues prepared, neural circuitry firing, and communicating, and energy levels up. Excellence can be attained if you care more than others think is wise, risk more than others think is safe, dream more than others think is practical, and expect more than others think is possible. And this is just something I always like to think about just trying to be as great as we can be and try to improve at everything that we do, so we can be the best that we can be. I just want to finish you off with an example. This is a follow leader warm-up, which I was talking about before. And really fun. They can use all our terrain, go outside. Sometimes they'll parkour off the walls, they'll go for a run, they'll crawl, they'll jump, they'll lunge walk. And again, just a variety and helps give our athletes a little bit of ownership into what they're doing. Gives them a sense of control. Right? We all as human beings want to have a sense of control. It's a great way to incorporate everybody and gives them the feel that they're owning the process just a little bit. And this is on a competition day, so you can see they wear different t-shirts. You've got half the teams in gold, half the teams in blue, as they navigate and move through our facility in and around our facility. And you can kind of see they're going to do some different stuff here, like a lot of lunge walk, and just follow the person out in front of them.
Where you go, Baron?
You're the best, Bear. I want some butterfly stretches here.
Here, okay.
Reps in, they're not cheating. So it's a really great way to hold everybody accountable. It's a really good time efficient way to use your time.
So we're going to do some tissue quality work before we do tissue length type work. Thank you for your time. Again, feel free if you have questions, reach out to me, Coach B at coachbpatel.com. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and of course check out our website. Thank you. Don't want to make that tissue tighter. If this is what we had to prepare for, then we would have to address it in the warm.
Went up for a layup and just kind of lost my balance coming down. And, when I came down, my knee it wasn't under me.